It's Sunday, March 29, 2026. I'm Anthony Davis. Welcome to the Weekend Show, where we make the time to consider the news of the week. You can support my work and independent journalism at patreon.com/5minute news. Our guest today is a researcher and journalist specializing in exposing disinformation and misleading stories on Fox, which she watches so we don't have to. Her podcast and Substack is entitled Decoding Fox News. Juliet Jeske, welcome back to The Weekend Show.
Thanks for having me.
I mentioned you watching so we don't have to. I want to start by asking, how are you? Because I think this is, something that a lot of us are feeling and not many of us are talking about, and that is this kind of collective sense of I think it's grief, the loss of democracy, the loss of the kind of, I don't really know what to call it, but the United States kind of certainly always felt a certain way to me, and it doesn't feel like that anymore. It doesn't feel like the land of the free. That liberal democracy is definitely on ice right now. So how are you coping with it, especially considering what you're consuming?
Well, right now, which is oddly helping, Fox is kind of ignoring the war. They didn't like reporting on it. I called them stumbling to cheerlead, is how I described it in my last podcast. And they were definitely, they don't know how to sell it. They just don't know how to sell it because they know deep down they don't really want this. I don't think anybody wanted this, except for Trump and maybe Hegseth and some oil tycoons. I don't know. So this week, because Trump said that there was a quote unquote break, and he's taking a break, which is bizarre in strategy for a number of reasons, because now they're getting ready.
5 days, wasn't it?
Yes.
And then it became 10 days.
Yes. And they're like kind of getting ready for the next attack on our part. And of course, it's not over because Israel is still firing, and they're firing at Israel, and Israel's firing at Hezbollah, and Hezbollah is still firing at Israel. So it's definitely not over. And it's not paused at all. But Fox seems more than happy to just ignore it this week. They ignored it this week, and because they don't want to report on it. So they're reporting about everything else. The government shutdown. There was another crime in Chicago involving an undocumented immigrant, allegedly. And they even recycled one from last month. They brought that one back, brought that family member back. And that poor woman just looked completely devastated. And I'm like, what are you doing? So this past week was actually easier than you'd expect, because it was almost comical how they didn't talk about the biggest story in the world right now, which is this war in the Middle East. So
they helped Donald Trump by covering up the fact that he was wearing a baseball cap.
Yes, they did. That was huge.
Recently, when the service, the service personnel were being repatriated, they used old footage.
Yes.
And then kind of had to correct the story. Just explain kind of how that played out and how you handled it.
Oh, it was on a Saturday, and I don't normally pick up news shows of Fox on the weekends because I'm usually trying to catch up from the previous week, unless there's some sort of huge story like a war or, any number of things. Trump loves to do stuff on the weekends that cause all of us to go and work, 7 days a week. But another account called Bad Fox Graphics caught it and had fact checked it and put it on Twitter. And I immediately pounced and went, this needs to get sent to everyone I know that has a big account. So because I was like, we got to boost this. So I literally went through my inbox of like anybody who had a big account, just slammed it on Twitter. And that worked. And a bunch of people start retweeting it. Jim Acosta did a video about it. And because I'm friendly with the account that runs Bad Fox Graphics, and that person is anonymous. So I don't know their gender. I don't know their name. And I knew that person couldn't do the media that I could do because I'm very much open about who I am. So I was like, I will boost this for you. And it worked. And then Fox apologized, issued an apology. And Jim Acosta, because he used to work in network news, had amazing insight, because he goes, I know how they load this stuff up. I know how they get these clips ready. There's no way they accidentally used an old clip. That just doesn't happen. Because they tried to say that they, accidentally pulled a clip that was 2 or 3 months old And it just happened. He didn't have the baseball cap. And then Trump being Trump, within a few days, went ahead and used a picture of himself at the transfer with the hat on.
That's right.
He doesn't care.
Yeah, that was a fundraising email, wasn't it, that he sent out?
Yes, he just doesn't care. And it was also mind-blowing because they basically were trying to hide from their audience that their glorious leader was wearing this goofy, baseball style cap that I think it said MAGA or USA on it. USA on it. It was this very obnoxious white hat. And he was wearing that at the dignified transfer where you're supposed to take your hat off. Unless you were military and it's part of your uniform.
Yeah.
So he just kept it on. And so, when they showed the footage that weekend, they tried to cover it up by showing this old footage. And Asen, who's at Midas Touch, he went through and actually he went through all the shows and found a couple used the correct footage, but most didn't. So that was wild. He's like, I don't understand that at all. Like a couple of them used the right footage. But the bigger shows, the ones with the bigger audience, used this old footage to kind of cover up the cap. It was just, there's no, and I made a comment that was because I was so angry about it. I said, I guess a coffin's a coffin to these people. They don't care. I was livid. I was livid about it. Which is why I went to complete hyperdrive and just started emailing everybody.
So let's explain why these things are so important in the current climate, because to all intents and purposes, Fox is now, and has been for a while, state regime media, and it will protect Donald Trump at all costs, even at the $1 billion cost that they ended up having to pay for lying about the 2020 election when they were sued by Dominion voting systems.
Yes.
So just to explain to us, how many people in America are watching this channel, and how does the propaganda kind of change the mindset of Americans? Because, this is not just it's hard to explain to people that aren't in the kind of ecosphere quite how powerful this platform is.
I would say it influences about a third of the country, and people may not watch it live on television, so it may not get the Nielsen ratings as much, but they definitely consume it online, and they consume clips online. And it is very cultish. It is very, they've done studies on it where when people watch a show on MS Now or CNN or ABC, NBC, whatever, they'll watch one news show and then they move on to something else. People who watch Fox News will keep it on all day. And Fox, being propagandists, they will show the same 3 or 4 stories over and over and over and over and the entire day. And same messaging, same wording, same everything. And it just becomes this trance. And I can always tell when someone watches a lot of Fox when they come at me. Usually I get most of my interaction with MAGA people on Facebook, my Facebook fan page, for whatever reason. Facebook or Instagram is when I think the way the algorithm works, it exposes my work more to everybody rather than just more of a narrow audience like some of the other social media. And so I get these crazy comments and I can tell immediately that they consume a lot of Fox News because they immediately bring up CNN as if I work for CNN or will defend CNN. And I'm just like, no, I don't work for CNN. It's really not my concern. And then they'll bring up CNN and then they bring up talking points that I've heard, for days or months or weeks. And I'm just like, So you watch a lot of Fox, obviously. And it's this whole, another thing that I've picked up from them that's very disturbing, that I don't know if this exists in other countries, but this idea in this country from Fox and from MAGA and Trump is this idea that it's a team and you cannot deviate. And if you don't agree with them on everything, you're just evil. You're evil incarnate. And there's no possible way that you could have a point of view that they might agree with, even though you probably do. About any number of things. There's no way that you can be a decent human being. I mean, it goes beyond just, I don't agree with you on your politics. They think you're evil. They think you're cruel. They think you're vicious. They just really buy into this. So it's very cultish. It's very, hive mind. It's scary because again, that idea of, not that we disagree on a couple of points, but just you're an evil person because you're not lockstep with me.
Right.
And that's, I don't view them that way at all. I don't at all.
That's an interesting point though, isn't it? That I don't know of any kind of liberal leaning or people or Democrats who hate Republicans. It's not hatred. They might feel sorry for them and recognize that misinformation over decades has fried their brains. But there isn't that kind of vitriol that you see from MAGA people who seek to own the libs. And arguably so many of the policies that have come out of Trump's second term are purely to own the libs. And, not least the rollback of all the climate change things.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is the one that hurts me the most because, I have kids and I recognize that their future is basically being screwed up by one man with a chip on his shoulder, or a whole plate of chips in front of him. In fact, that's the English definition of chips. So let's talk about Fox and the war, because this is when it gets very serious. And this is why I wanted you on. This war, started as a whim, I guess. The Epstein files was everywhere. And there was this opportunity, nudged by Israel, but there was this opportunity to distract from the fact that Donald Trump's name had been discovered more times than anybody else's name in the Epstein files. And he was starting to get into hot water. Pam Bondi was starting to get into hot water with this whole cover up. And so they really did need something as massive as a war to take that off of the front pages. Do you think it really was as simple as that?
I do. I think there might be, I can't read Trump's mind. He does seem to have kind of an imperialist point of view of conquering and stealing treasure, which is what he, very 18th century, the 19th century, I would call it, robber baron, late 19th century. He has that bizarre point of view where he's like, I will seize this land and then this land will be America. And you're like, what are you doing?
He thinks he is America. That's how I've kind of concluded it.
He does.
And that's problematic, isn't it? When one man, rather than swearing allegiance to the country, actually thinks he is the country. Yes.
And he doesn't think laws apply to him. So that's part of it. But I do think that, it also has to do with the distraction of the Epstein files, because it was the day before the war started, maybe a couple of days, those files that were a young woman who had been interviewed by the FBI. There's 4 different times she was interviewed by the FBI. She directly implicated Trump and said that he had raped her when she was a child. And, the next day we start a war, it was and immediately the MAGA people, what was interesting about that, because I posted a video about that, is the MAGA people came on my Facebook fan. I like interacting with them. I don't care. They don't bother me, because I find insight from the weirdness that they come up with. And the MAGA people had I want to say they had 5 different explanations for that. Oh, she's this type of person. This is what happened. This is all a lie. And they all had these different conspiracy theories to debunk that person, which was interesting. I was like, you guys can't even keep the story straight, but this is fun to see these different theories of, immediately discounting it. There's no way there could be any validity to these stories, even though, again, the FBI interviewed her 4 times, which that's a lot, because if they didn't think there was anything there, they would have interviewed her once and that would be it. So, that was very interesting. And again, that was coming out, and we're only seeing part of the Epstein files. We all know that there's millions of pages that we haven't seen yet. And he knows that. And, all of these other, connections of Lutnick. People forgot that Howard Lutnick said, I'm stopped talking. He was next door neighbors with the man. He was next door neighbors with Jeffrey Epstein. Then he said he never associated with him. And then they found evidence that he went to the island, pictures, the whole thing. So
why would you buy a house next door if you knew who was living there? I mean,
and especially with that kind of money, you can live wherever you want. It's not like, we fell in love with this house. And, it's not like when, like in the suburbs buying a house for $400,000, this is a man with a mortgage. This is a man who probably just well, he would probably have a mortgage for tax purposes, but this is, it's a nice write-off. But this is a man.
He can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, he could literally buy. I mean, those houses where Jeffrey Epstein lived, because I live in New York, I've lived here for 25 years, would run for like tens of millions of dollars. This is not a casual purchase. So yeah, he could live wherever he wanted. So why on earth did you live next door to Jeffrey Epstein? And then again, evidence that you went to his island of all places, and then you lied about it, and we caught you lying about it. So that was all coming to fruition all at the same time, and then suddenly we have this war.
Yeah, mysteriously, that's all gone away. So what did the Fox audience? How much of the Epstein storyline were the Fox audience getting?
They reduced it to, that was really interesting because they ignored it for months, and people kept asking me, what are they saying? And I'm like, nothing. And they're like, nothing? I'm like, nothing. They do not mention it. As soon as it was clear that Trump didn't want them to talk about it anymore, they shut it down. They stopped talking about it. And then only when Trump said, let's open the files, and that was last year, and he said, we're going to do it. We got a deadline. Let's do it. I'm on board. Then all of a sudden they start talking about it again. And then they stopped talking about it. And then it wasn't until Hillary Clinton did her deposition, which was just comical, because why on earth were you interviewing her over that? And they interviewed her, and then Bill Clinton, and then they tried to make it about Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, and formerly known as Prince Andrew. I don't know how to refer to him, but the person formerly known as Prince Andrew, they start talking about him, and they just made it about those three. And what was even crazier is, I can't remember this gentleman's name, but Jesse Waters had an author on who had worked at the, what do you call it? National Enquirer. And he was part of the scandal of destroying a bunch of, I think his last name's Levitt. I can't remember, but he destroyed a bunch of documents related to Trump. And then he wrote 2 books, one about Jeffrey Epstein and one about Trump being a sexual predator. And they had this guy on Jesse Waters' show repeatedly. And that one of the names of his books was like, basically like Trump's a sexual predator. And the whole book, when you read the synopsis of it, was like, Trump is a, sexual predator. And they didn't care, because they were like, oh, we can have this guy on and he can talk about Bill Clinton, basically, sort of, but he didn't even say anything. They couldn't get anything on, to stick on Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton. And the fact that Hillary Clinton's like, yes, tape this, put this anywhere. I don't care. Let's go. And Hillary Clinton's like the master of dealing with that sort of thing.
But this happens a lot with Republicans, doesn't it? They'll hype something up. There'll be a hearing of some sort, which invariably the witness says, I want to do this publicly, and the Republicans are like, no, we want to do this behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And then they try and spin it for Fox, and then Fox spins it because it was behind closed doors, except on this occasion, Hillary Clinton came out and made a formidable speech in front of the cameras.
She's great.
And kind of hit the media quite hard.
What was great about that too is they kept showing that clip, and they're like, she had a meltdown. And I'm like, no, she just owned you. Like, I know you love to twist that as like she had a meltdown, but she just made you look like idiots, because she's just like, what are you doing? Why am I even here? And, because she also snapped at Boebert, and they tried to turn that into a big, scandal. She snapped at Boebert. I'm like, yeah, because Boebert broke the rules and leaked a photo. Right. Yeah. So that was
with her name plaque at the bottom of the picture.
Yeah,
just in case anybody didn't know who had taken it. Yeah. She's
such a bumbling fool. Boebert, brilliant woman. I'm sorry. Rhodes Scholar. Anyway, being sarcastic.
So it's really important that I think people recognize that for those of us who are engaged with factual news, not those of us who work in it, but people who are, who care to know what's going on in the world, there is a parallel universe of Fox viewers who think that they're watching the news, but they're not watching the news, right? Because Fox is not a news channel. It is an infotainment channel invariably, and has some of the most repulsive programming. I know you're a big fan of The Five. We can talk about that, and some of the individuals themselves. Not least Hannity in the evenings and Laura Ingraham. But these people are operatives. They are GOP operatives who've become far right MAGA operatives, and Many of them are white supremacists. I mean, I saw Laura Ingraham in a video doing the Nazi salute. I mean, that's who these people are. And this is before we even get into Jesse Waters territory, which is a whole kind of cesspit of its own. So just talk to me about this kind of parallel existence, this, you know, we talk about echo chambers, don't we? That for those of us who live in reality, it's sometimes hard for us to recognize how completely different that information silo is that a third of the country are living in.
I always compare Fox to the PBS NewsHour, which is our version of the BBC, although now it doesn't get any federal funding, which is very straight down the middle, high quality, nonpartisan news. And I do that on purpose to sort of give me some reference of like, where is reality? Because if I only watched Fox, I think I would miss a lot. And so I watch every single episode of the PBS NewsHour religiously every single week. And it helps because it is a totally different universe. Like, you would think right now that if you watched Fox, Iran is a smoldering ruin, that they don't have an enormous military, which they do. You would think that you wouldn't realize that 92 million people live there. You wouldn't realize that there were protests for the government of Iran now in the streets of Iran, that there are people with, nationalism is over the top. Of course it is, because they're being attacked by a foreign country. You would have no idea that Israel's being hit as often as it is. You'd have no idea. No, Israel, they have a bizarro relationship with Israel and how they cover Israel. You would have no idea that Lebanon, for instance, is a diverse country with multiple religions, and that Hezbollah is just one part of it, and that Hezbollah is not beloved by many Lebanese, especially the Christians and other groups who want nothing to do with that organization, and the government does not care for Hezbollah. It's like its own separate thing. You would think that if you watched Fox, that Hezbollah was the government of Lebanon, which is not. And that it was, again, like this beloved fighting force, which it's absolutely not. So that's like a layer of complication that they never show. They never show civilian deaths in Lebanon. They never, they never show any of the dark side to this. Like, they would never show, because this has happened, Israel hitting like an apartment building in Beirut. Yes. They'd never show that. So you get this very, never in a million years would you see that on Fox.
It's like a Disney version of a war in the Middle East.
Yes. And they also leave out all that detail. And then the only thing that I've really seen from Fox, and this is one of the reasons why I think they're trying to not talk about it so much, is they keep showing aerial shots of like black and white of things getting blown up from very far away. And that's not very compelling, because you don't even know what they're blowing up. They'll just show a building. Oh, look, we just...
Well, that's the footage that's come from the Pentagon, isn't it? That's like the imagery that we see from those drones, like when they were dropping missiles on fishing boats. And they seem to love that, because it's like
a video
being
game
in Mission Impossible or something.
Yeah, it doesn't look real too. It doesn't. You don't see you don't envision a human being in that building or in the truck that just got blown up or the boat. And then meanwhile, PBS has people embedded in Iran who are reporting every day, telling them what's happening. They have people in Lebanon. They have people in Israel, and you get more of a sense of what's going on there. Whereas, Fox, it's just these same images over and over, and then they'll interview a retired military general and talk to him for 7 minutes, and they'll say, oh, well, and then that's it. And you'd think that the entire, Iranian government is at its knees and it's pretty much over, and we don't have to, and it's like, none of that's true. If you watch any other news source, you would see none of that's true. And it is surreal. It is like a totally different reality.
Our reality is that Trump has bitten off way more than he can chew. He thought he'd be able to do this kind of air assault like he did with Maduro in Venezuela, and, just kill the Ayatollah, and that would be the end of it. With no knowledge or understanding of the culture. He didn't know about Sunnis and Shiites. He didn't know any of the history that he was, opening up. And there is a reason why no previous president has attacked Iran. And Trump kind of wears it like a badge of honor. No previous president has attacked Iran, and I was the only one who could do it. And it's like, yeah, you've kind of got that the wrong way round. And clearly, Netanyahu is thrilled because Trump is the only president who is stupid enough to do this on Israel's behalf.
Yeah, and it's one of those things which is also terrible because now you've got resentment. I talked about this in my podcast because obviously we have a problem with Islamophobia because of situations like this. And now we have, anti-Semitism is at just psychotic levels.
Yes.
And what happened to that synagogue in Michigan, and it was a Reform synagogue. I was like, you have no idea. Reform Jews tend to be liberal. They tend to be left-wing. They tend to be completely against Trump. And you attacked a Reform. I mean, it's just to equate American Jews who have any number of different political opinions about Israel. Many are very, very critical of Israel. And to lump them in with the government of Israel is outrageous. It's the same as doing that to a Muslim and saying, oh, hey, Muslim American who lives in Michigan, you're just like that Iranian and you hate women and you hate, and going down the list. That's absurd to do.
But that's what the MAGA Republican rhetoric is now.
Yes, that is exactly what it is.
Aside from banning all Muslims from entering the U.S.
Yes, and that's the other thing that they've also ramped up the Islamophobia on Fox to absolutely disturbing levels, like saying, well, this is part of their religion. This is part of their religion. So therefore, they're just warmongers because it's in the Quran. It's in their religion. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, you could say that about any religion. Read the old, Jewish, you'd say Torah, Christian, you'd say Old Testament. There's plenty of go get them, kill everybody in religious text. It's not exclusive to one faith, and you can twist any faith to, in a warped, disgusting way. And so on Fox, they act like it's just like in the nature of the Iranian people or of Muslim people in the Middle East to be like this. And I'm like, it is a theocracy. They are extremists, but I guess Saudi Arabia is okay because we're allies with them. And then like Jordan and like Iraq, which is a very, troubled country because of us in many ways. And then you've got, it's just, they don't make any sense. They're also, if they can find a way to just take a whole group of people, demonize them, dehumanize them, they'll take it, they'll do it. And so that's what they've been doing with this situation in Iran. And that's difficult. That's probably the most difficult thing I've had to sit through since this started is just the hatred towards over one, I think, I'll probably get the number wrong, but it's over 1 billion Muslims on the planet. And they just, on Fox, they're all evil. And that's just, of course they're not. That's crazy. It's like, you can't say that about any religion, and I was raised Catholic. Of course, Catholics did horrible things like the Crusades, which Pete Hegseth is obsessed with and thinks is glorious, which is like, when I read his book, I read a couple of his books and the Crusades got brought up a lot and his weird Crusade tattoos and such. I was like, who in their right mind who's got a brain that works thinks that was a good thing? Because even the Catholic Church came out and apologized for that ages ago.
Yeah. But that is his thing.
Yeah.
It is a weird kind of warped view of the world. They have this Armageddon belief, and they think that this war is the holy war that is going to bring about the second coming of Jesus, I guess. But actually, it's just racism, isn't it? It's just racism. Racism. Yeah. And we heard this week that Hegseth's reportedly trying to block the military promotion of 4 officers, 2 women and 2 black men, to become 1-star generals, because no black people and no women in the military as far as he's concerned. So this is our shared reality, and I sense your anxiety, and I feel it too, that, if stuff isn't true, it's even more frustrating, isn't it? Because it's like, if you guys only knew the truth, then you probably might not be who you are. And it's the indoctrination over decades, going back to Roger Ailes' days, of turning Fox into this kind of machine for the Republican Party. let's just talk about some of the cast of characters for a minute, because there are back channels. This is the other thing, is there are back channels between the hosts and the White House directly. And people like Hannity, they feel like they have a hand in how public policy is addressed and created. Is that still as potent as it was in Trump's first term?
100%. If anything, it's gotten worse. They just had Trump on last week. He was on the 5, and he called in because he can't be bothered to actually physically get there. But he, even though he has a home in New York, but
right. He'd have to get dressed.
He did that whole. He did the
sitting up in bed.
Yeah, he did the classic lazy Trump call-in situation, which he's done for years with Fox, and it was not the entire show, but it was about 42 minutes, if I remember. Yeah, 42 minutes of him calling and just being super chummy with everybody. And we know during the January 6th attack on the Capitol, Fox News hosts were texting either Trump or texting his chief of staff. They were texting Mark Meadows, if I remember correctly. And they were like, tell him to stop. That's how close they are to him. There's no division. And he, called in and was being super chummy with them. And it was like old pals, and he'll do the same thing with Fox and Friends. He calls into Fox and Friends. He did that more last year. But to dedicate 42 minutes to a phone call with this, and everything he said was just nonsense. He kept lying and saying things that just were blatantly not true. And they
can't get him off the phone, can they?
No,
it's like having a demented grandpa kind of ringing you, and you just want to go out and get on with your day, and it's just like, I just can't get him off the phone.
Well, the cabinet meeting, the first it was like 25 minutes or 20 minutes of it started. The cabinet meeting that was last week just started with him just rambling, and he started talking, and then later in the cabinet meeting he started talking about pens that made no sense. And he talked about pens for 6 minutes. It was a Sharpie.
Drapes. Don't forget the drapes.
Drapes as well. And he just, it's like, you could, if you wanted to just, and that's the other thing that's been so frustrating about following him this administration, is he cannot stop talking. So if he gets a chance to get a microphone and a camera on him, he's like, ooh, and it'll be the dumbest thing. He did an hour and a half long, and I sat through the whole thing, hour and a half long round table about college sports. And I can reduce it to a sentence, which is basically, now we have to pay college athletes. Don't worry, I'll sue, and then because we've already lost in court, I'll sue, and then we'll get them on appeal. But for an hour and a half, I had to listen to this idiot do his regular stump speech, which he says every time he gets a microphone, of like, I won the 2020 election, and all the same stupid lies.
Transgender for everyone.
And he just says the same horrible, ridiculous things, total lies. Inflation was the worst ever under Biden, total lie. One right after the other. And, and everybody just sits there and just nods and like, yeah. And, I mean, like, I can't, and they were like, when I watched this episode of The Five, they were like, well, Biden never would have done that. I'm like, yeah, president probably shouldn't do that, because the president has things to do,
Right. Well, like running the country. But isn't this, I mean, what this does do, the fact that Trump can find 40 minutes to phone in to a TV show suggests to me, and then obviously spending a lot of the rest of the time executive time, which is watching Fox. And then if he's not doing executive Fox watching, then he's playing golf. And so we really are dealing with somebody who is clearly not presidenting. And it is interesting that they're still blaming Joe Biden for all of their missteps, even though that was 18 months ago almost. And so it's the problem, though, and we'll talk about this in a minute after the break, is that because of all this stand-up comedy that Trump likes to do, these routines that he gets into, and the fact that he does talk about drapes and pens and things.
Ballrooms.
It takes the edge off of the authoritarianism, and it takes the edge off of the dictatorship. And for people who are on the receiving end, people of color, immigrants of color, and the working poor, ultimately, who are suffering and struggling at the hands of ICE agents, Trump's henchmen, the Gestapo-style militarized policing that is now going on across the US. And this is before you factor in the Middle East and North Africa. We are dealing with a man who is as dangerous as Vladimir Putin, but is maybe less scary because he phones in for 45 minutes and does his gags. Do you think that's fair to say that
Yes.
that's partly why people are not kind of pressing all the fire alarm buttons, is because he's just a bit of a joke?
Yes, I think it's a combination of that. And I also think one thing that weirdly gives me hope is that Democrats just keep winning election after election after election after election. And they keep flipping seats, not just winning elections, but like making seats go from red to blue all over the country.
Yes.
Just in Mar-a-Lago, that was a state rep, so not that big of a deal, but the state rep, she managed to flip that seat in the district includes Mar-a-Lago, and that was huge. And, Trump was stumping for the other candidate and that guy didn't win. And so that, I think people are excited about that. And this is just depressing. But one of the things I see, because I love going through the comments, I don't always interact with people, but I like to see kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
And the thing that I find very interesting on my clips and other people's clips is people just are basically waiting for him to die. They're like, come on, natural causes, do it,
Right.
And that's kind of terrifying because we could have him for years. His parents both lived
easily.
very long lives, very long lives. But I do think that bumbling, clownish, and I hate to insult clowns, but that, because they don't need that. But there's, that kind of P.T. Barnum over the top, kind of huckster, goofy, obsession with buildings and the Federal Reserve building and his stupid monuments and, oh, you gave me a prize, you gave me a present,
right,
I got an award. That all of that goofiness sort of covers up the darkness of how scary this is. If I have hope that the midterms will be a complete tidal wave of blue, but if he doesn't show up and shut down elections, it's hard to know. We have governors in this country that would fight like hell if he tried to do that. But it is, I go back and forth. There's times where I'm like, it's going to be okay. We're going to,
I'm the same. I have good days and bad days.
I do
but that's
too.
because he changes so often and is so erratic. And that's partly where I think the anxiety for us kind of kicks in, is because there is no sense of direction. It is all over the place.
It's constant chaos. And the other thing that's so troubling is that because it's constant chaos, it's just like a fire hose of insanity all the time. And I just think, I will say this also gives me a little bit of hope. My sister lives in Missouri, which is the middle part of the country, and like smack dab in the middle of the country. And it's a very deeply, deeply red state. And she knows people who voted for Trump 3 times, and this war pushed them over the edge, and they are mad. They are mad. And those people aren't getting picked up in polls, I think, as much, but they exist. And like my sister called me like 2 days after the war, and she said, so-and-so, I don't want to say the person's name, I don't want to embarrass anybody, but she said, so-and-so just flipped out, and he said he hates Trump. He's so mad about this war. And I'm like, you're kidding. Because I knew the guy's voting patterns and the fact that he would get into it with her about MAGA and this and that. And I said, I cannot believe that. And she goes, no, he flipped out. He's livid because Trump kept saying no new wars. I won't start a war. My personality, I won't start a war. No endless wars in the Middle East specifically. And now here we are. So it is I think for anybody who's in media, this entire Trump 2.0 has been a roller coaster of emotions, because it's that whole having moments of like, it's going to be okay. And then having moments of like, it's all over. Everything's falling apart. Like, this is it. We had this American dream and now it's basically a dictatorship. And
it's a dystopian nightmare. That's what it seems like it's become.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick break. I want to come back, though, and talk about, what people can do and how maybe we can try and change some minds and communicate with people who are kind of marinated in that Fox News bubble. We'll do that next here on The Weekend Show. Cold days, big goals, and honestly, no time to cook. I've definitely had weeks where I want to eat healthy, but the planning, grocery shopping, and cooking just isn't happening. That's why I've been loving Factor. Fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the stress. One of my favorite meals lately is their Mediterranean-style chicken with roasted veggies. It's perfect when my schedule's packed because it's got lean protein, colorful vegetables, and whole food ingredients that actually leave you feeling full instead of sluggish. Factor focuses on quality, functional ingredients, think lean proteins, healthy fats, and real veggies with no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. So whether your goal is healthy eating, managing calories, or getting more protein in your routine, it fits right in. And the variety is honestly great. Factor has 100 rotating weekly meals, so things stay fresh all winter. You'll find options like high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean diet, GLP-1 support, plus ready-to-eat salads. They've even got a Muscle Pro collection designed to support strength and recovery. The best part? Convenience. These meals are always fresh, never frozen, and they're ready in about 2 minutes. No prep, no stress, just heat and eat. I use it, and so should you. Head to factormeals.com/weekend50off and use code weekend50off to get 50% off and free breakfast for a year. Eat like a pro this month with Factor. New subscribers only, varies by plan. One free breakfast item per box for 1 year while subscription is active. Thanks to HomeServe for sponsoring this episode. Owning a home is amazing, until it's not. 1 minute you're relaxing with your morning coffee, the next you're ankle deep in water because a pipe decided today was the day. It's always the worst timing, right? Repairs don't wait, and they definitely don't care about your budget. I had one of those moments. My water heater started acting up out of nowhere. Suddenly I was scrambling, Googling contractors, wondering how much it was about to cost me, and spoiler, emergency home repairs are never cheap. HomeServe, though, was great, and I was thrilled with the service they provided. Here's the thing, most homeowners' insurance doesn't cover a lot of these everyday breakdowns. Plumbing issues, HVAC problems, electrical hiccups, you're usually on your own. That's where HomeServe comes in. They offer plans that are basically like a subscription for your home, from as little as $4.99 a month, and you can choose the coverage that fits your needs and budget. So instead of panicking and searching for help when something breaks, you just call their 24/7 hotline and get the repair process started. It's simple. Pick a plan, enroll, and if something covered goes wrong, you've got a path forward. They've been helping homeowners for over 20 years and work with a network of local, reliable, licensed professionals across the country. With over 4.5 million customers and a 4.8 out of 5 post-repair rating and an A+ BBB rating, a lot of people are already trusting them for that extra peace of mind. So, protect your home systems and your wallet from covered repairs. Plans start at just $4.99 a month. Go to homeserve.com to find the plan that's right for you. That's homeserve.com. Not available everywhere. Most plans range between $4.99 and $11.99 a month for your first year. Terms apply on covered repairs. We're back on the Weekend Show with Juliet Jeske. I'm Anthony Davis. Juliet, before the break, we were talking about when stuff gets so bad, you can kind of only really laugh it off. And I think that Trump as a stand-up comedian is very problematic especially for, a lot of the media are white middle-class people. And so they're not affected directly necessarily by a lot of Trump's policies or rhetoric. They somehow manage to, live in their own media bubble, even if it's on the left. And that is problematic because the world now looks very different to how it did just 12 months ago. And it's all one man's fault. Did you think when you started decoding Fox News that it would get as crazy as it has, to the point that we're on the cusp of a kind of world war, certainly a world energy war. Did you ever think it would go this far with Trump at the helm?
No. I remember when he won the last election, I was I wasn't shocked, but I was kind of comatose. I remember like that night I was in this apartment, just like, I can't really process this. And it's been much, much worse than I thought. And it's because he feels like he's surrounded himself with yes men who will not say no to him and who don't know what they're doing, many of them. The fact that he put 2 real estate billionaires in charge of negotiations instead of diplomats is profound. One of which is his son-in-law, which is insane.
Who's a close personal friend of Netanyahu.
Yeah, which is also incredibly problematic. And oh my goodness. And the fact that he has all of this, he's just gone, the ambitions like the Greenland, which he never brought that up ever during the campaign. Greenland is bizarre. The things he's pulled with Venezuela, the Cuba, I mean, like, you can criticize the Cuban government, but like, there's so many people suffering in Cuba right now who also would criticize their own government, like,
right.
What are you doing with every day with the Cuba thing? I'm just like, what are you, those poor, like, there's people in hospitals who can't get electricity, who could die, people who are running out of food and because all their food got spoiled from not having electricity, and all the horrible things that are happening in Cuba because this guy's playing like some sort of weird game.
Right. And it's the same in Yemen, actually. I mean, people are not hearing enough about the atrocities that the US government is inflicting upon the Yemeni people, too. And, I mean, I have heard him say some things recently where, he was referring to drug cartels in boats, and he said, we're just going to kill them dead, and uses this kind of maniacal language like he is a baddie in a movie. And I realized that this guy really is evil. Like, he gets off on this stuff, and he has zero empathy for the suffering of others. And so this lifetime of grievances, because he's broken the law his whole life, and he hates the fact that law enforcement have held his feet to the fire in court and elsewhere over the years, that this now, I mean, he told us, didn't he, that this would be an administration of retribution, and we're not just getting it on a domestic level, but he's literally blaming the world for his own insecurity.
Yeah, it's that's the part that I think I did not anticipate. I did not anticipate his absolutely, like I said earlier, kind of like mid-19th century imperialistic, seizing treasure, seizing, colonies, sort of as he sees it in his brain. That level of just evil is the only thing I can think of. And the other thing it makes like E. Jean Carroll's account even more credible is he said the other day, I can just take it. I can do whatever I want with it. And I'm like, you're speaking of a country, I believe he was talking about Cuba. I can do whatever I want with it. That's the same
language as the Access Hollywood tape, isn't it? Yeah.
I can grab them by the pussy because when you're a star, they let you do it. I can just kiss them. They won't say stop. They won't say no. And that's the same mentality of someone who doesn't understand the concept of consent, who doesn't view other people as people. We're just objects. Countries are just objects. And there are no guardrails, there are no rules. The fact that he's plastered the White House with gold and gold lettering and all this insanity of that insane wall of presidents and the name Oval Office and all that. I'm going to build this building and I'm going to tear down the East Wing and I'm going to build this arch and I'm going to destroy the Kennedy
he put a
Center.
statue of Christopher Columbus in the garden this week too, didn't
Which looks so comical because it's like, and it says, the plaque says, discovered America. Like he's like, Trump is in the 3rd grade and gotten mad that somebody said, well, Columbus wasn't a great guy. He kind of had, have you read his journals? Because he said really disgusting things in those. Like Christopher Columbus did not view native people as human beings. That's very clear.
Well, that's why Trump feels an affinity with him, I guess.
Yes.
And that's why they're putting all the base names back to Confederate generals. And I mean, and part of it, I feel like, is to own the libs, but part of it, most of it, is because they simply are white nationalist supremacists that, with this unhealthy dose or an unhealthy dose of American exceptionalism. But if Trump represents the worst parts of America, because, as I see it, Netanyahu does not represent Israelis.
No.
He's doing it for his own needs, to his own ends.
Yes.
And it's kind of the same with Trump, right? These people are both wanted men, and therefore they want to burn everything down before, anyone gets to them. And they have that in common. So if Trump is the worst of America and he doesn't represent America, is there is that former, that kind of great, the branding is the greatest country in the world, which is obviously a matter of opinion, but that's the branding nonetheless. Is that still there? The shining beacon on the hill, all of that stuff. Is it still there to be rediscovered by Democrats or anybody else?
I think it is because of what happened in Minnesota, in that when Renee Good and Alex Preddy were murdered by government officials, ICE and Border Patrol.
By Trump, effectively.
By Trump, basically. And then the government lied about it, which just made it so much worse and, demonized them. The people of Minnesota came out in massive numbers, and they showed up and they started protecting people of color, people who were Latino, to, they would just, the massive amount of people, and it was like the dead of winter. And I lived in Chicago. I know how cold it gets up there. And these, they had 1-degree temperatures, and these people were out in massive numbers. They're just like, you picked the wrong state to mess with. We will not put up with this. We know we still have the, right to assemble. We know we still have the right to freedom of speech, and we're coming out. Yeah. And that gave me a lot of hope. And I have a friend who lives in Minneapolis, and I was texting him like, you guys are amazing. And that, there's still massive protests against this government. And that also gives me hope, that even though they're trying to bully people and intimidate them and disenfranchise, like I'm divorced, and because I'm divorced, my name is different than, because I kind of kept, it's a long story. I have a hyphenated last name, but because of that, my legal last name, I had to jump through all these hoops to get a real ID. I had to bring a whole file of paperwork. And the fact that he wants to make it harder for people who changed their name to vote, which is married women and divorced women in many cases. And that whole thing of all these things that they're trying to do. One of the things that does give me hope every single day is when people just refuse and because those people in Minnesota who came out in like 1-degree temperatures to protest knew they could be the next Renee Good. They could be the next Alex Preddy, and they didn't care. They were that determined. And that to me was like, it's still there. We just need to get rid of this horrible, horrible administration. There's still Americans who believe in the dream, who believe in what we were founded for, who believe in, it's behind me. You can't see it because it's all backwards because of the camera, but I have the First Amendment, on my wall. That was the first thing I got for this little mini studio of mine. I bought the First Amendment in print form and slapped it on the wall because to me, we have plenty of flaws in this country. We have all kinds of problems in our history, very problematic history. But the one thing, the most beautiful thing about this country is, to me, the First Amendment is almost perfection. And because it wraps up so many rights in one statement, and that we saw that in real life in Minnesota, and we will see it again in other cities that they do this. They try to bully us, or they try to kill citizens in cold blood on camera in daylight. That's what it was. Even more just, you've got to be kidding me. Where there's video of this, we can all see it happen. There's witnesses, and then you gaslight and say it's not happening. I just,
The third No Kings protest has taken place this weekend, and each time it gets bigger and has this kind of desire to be heard. Do you think Trump knows that these No Kings protests are directly against him, and this notion that he thinks of himself as a monarch, certainly as a dictator? I mean, we've heard also this week that he now is going to have his face on, coins and banknotes potentially, and he wants this is insane, and no president has ever appeared on legal tender before, and yet Trump is insisting that this is something that needs to be done. And as you mentioned earlier, he was just given an award, an America First award, for achievement in, I don't know, presidenting, but it was a made-up award, like the FIFA Peace Award was made up. And this is all to just make him, give him a little bit of sugar in the face of a collapsing government and country.
I think that, his handlers, Fox has downplayed every single protest against Trump since they've started. They always downplay them. They've showed, there's another one, they've done this. They show old footage. They've replaced old footage with things. One of the things that Fox got caught doing is they were using footage from 2020 that were, the protests were more violent, during COVID. And they were using clips from 2020 and trying to pass them off as from 2025. They got busted doing that. And they downplay that. And I think that Trump insulates himself so much with his handlers who just tell him what he wants to hear, that he lives in delusion. He thinks, and he just said last week when he was on the 5, oh, everybody loves me. I'm very popular. All these polls that show I'm not popular, they're fake. They're not real.
That's right.
He really believes it. And
but he did one time say, I don't understand why people aren't kind of more supportive. And that was a kind of rare moment of vulnerability from him, where it just didn't compute. And it, because I sometimes think that he doesn't know anything about anything, and so he's just plowing on with his tunnel vision. But this was a rare moment where he was seeing the polling, even it was probably less accurate than the reality that they presented him with. But he actually felt aggrieved that why were people not happy that he was deporting immigrants with in such violent fashion. He just didn't get it.
Yeah, he doesn't. I mean, I think he's a narcissist. I think his narcissism levels are off the scale. You could say narcissistic personality disorder. You could say pathological narcissist. So he tends to see himself as the center of the universe and everyone else is just an object floating around him. So it is difficult for him to see anybody else's point of view. Like, he doesn't see other people's point of view. And it might have been that somebody got to him and he said, well, I just don't understand, because he does think that he's far more popular than he is and that he's beloved. I'm your favorite president. That's something he says often. And he surrounds himself with these people who just, like, another weird thing about MAGA, because I have all 117 of his campaign rallies on a hard drive, and I've gone through about 50 of them, because I find it very interesting to go through the old ones when I can fit it in, because I don't have a lot of free time. But he has people who go to his rallies who will show up, like, no matter where he's speaking, they're there and they're in the front row, and he calls them front row Joes, and he knows them by name. He knows where they're from. And he thinks the whole world is like that. So when that bubble does burst occasionally, when he realizes, oh, some people don't like me, he can't really accept it. Like, he doesn't understand. He thinks, well, they must be getting lied to. He kind of goes into Fox News mode where he says, they're just getting bad information. They don't know. It's because it's fake news, and they're being lied to by that evil media. He regularly, every single speech, rips on the media, rips on the fake press, the fake news. So he thinks it's a conspiracy against him, not that, you or I or anyone else just doesn't like him.
Yeah. Or could have an opinion.
Or could have an opinion other
Right.
than his. Yeah. I can't even, and the other thing that's very interesting about his personality with that is with these goofy fake awards is it's never enough. I mean, he could have a warehouse full of this nonsense and he'd want the next prize.
Well, even if he got the Nobel Peace Prize, he would still hate himself. I mean, I think that's what this boils down to, and he hasn't worked that out yet.
But
the people that you're describing who are not supporting him and he is starting to know about, they are going to get labeled insubordinate. Mm-hmm. And my fear is that the next layer of this authoritarian regime is going to be taking people that are against Trump and incarcerating them in these giant warehouses, whether they're American citizens or not. That is another level altogether, but I fear that is their intention, because they're kind of running out of people to deport now.
Yeah, I think they will try to do that. He has tried to go after all his enemies, and that's pretty much all of that's failed, because like the last one was Jerome Powell. The judge just said, I can't find any criminality here whatsoever, and threw it out. But even with like James Comey and Letitia James and all these other people he tried to go after, it's all fallen apart. Mm-hmm. But if they could find a way to violate the First Amendment, to basically say, well, these people protested and we don't think that they're being anti-American and they were a threat, if they could try to twist it somehow to say that the people were a violent threat.
Well, it'll be domestic terrorism, won't it?
Well, it's so funny because I joke about being Antifa all the time online, and because what does that even mean? It just means anti-fascist. I don't go to meetings or anything, but I joke about it all the time, and occasionally people think they've got something on me, and they'll go, "You're Antifa," and I go, "Yeah, I'm anti-fascist. What's your point?" And they go, "But that's a domestic terrorist group." I'm like, "No, it's not. That's something he made up. You know that, right?" I'm purposely, I'm flying to Chicago on Monday, and I'm going to I have a couple Antifa stickers on my laptops, and I always joke when I make it through TSA with nobody saying anything, so they don't recognize the symbol. But the joke is now, I'm still not sure what exactly is going on with ICE in airports. That's sort of in flux. But if ICE might recognize it, and I'm like, bring it. I'm a reporter. Let's go. I'm a journalist. Let's go. I'm a journalist. I will milk that to the sun. And I'm kidding, but yeah.
But even the fact that you don't fear this regime is a very important lesson for everybody else, because, there's that famous Roosevelt quote, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself." And I think that really applies in this case, because a lot of the fear is in the minds of people who are kind of willing to see this movement as anything other than chaotic. Yeah. And, that they really are a disaster. They've not had any success with anything, not least the war on Iran. And so, you have a choice. You can either be frightened of it and be like, this is a disaster, the country has fallen, democracy is gone, or you can be like, these guys are freaking idiots.
They are idiots. We're actually very fortunate that they're idiots, and they're all idiots. And actually, by surrounding himself with yes men, he made it worse, because instead of, I don't know, if he'd gotten a competent, although this does work, I have mixed feelings about this as well, because, who knows what Hegseth is actually capable of. But the fact that he hired a Fox News host who's more worried about how he looks on camera than anything else. If you read his books too, that man is what do you call that? When somebody doesn't eat they have disordered eating. He has disordered eating. I was reading his book going like, you're the way he writes about food is kind of like how a insecure 15-year-old writes about like, I look a little chubby. You know, he's got that in his head.
It's body dysmorphia.
And he wears that suit he wears these suit jackets that look
too
like
tight.
a rip. And but there's something like, he's so kind of dim and bumbling and just what is going on with him. And then you'll see Dan Raising Kane, who's the actual military professional, and he will get on the microphone and I'm like, oh, okay, we're not going to all die from a nuke, because that guy knows what he's talking about. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, if Trump had actually hired somebody like Trump, but in the military, that would be worse. So it's sort of the fact that he hires complete idiots in his cabinet in a way, because they'll just worship him in a way, is kind of saving us a little bit, because they are bumbling idiots. They don't know what they're doing. They're just like, watch any meeting with them. And it's just like, there was one he just had last week where Stephen Miller just praised him at length. And then he stopped and he says, hey, Marco, can you top that?
Yeah.
And he was talking about the praise of him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that should not be your primary issue in a meeting. Who praises you the most? That should not be. And so in a way that does kind of make me sleep better at night, because I'm like, none of them know what they're doing. They're not shrewd, because this is dark, but Hitler's people, like if you study like the top Nazis, they weren't stupid at all. And Hess kind of lost his mind. Rudolph, that was the one that flew to the UK. But they were not, he like had like a mental breakdown, but most of them were shrewd. They were vicious. They hated each other. They were all backstabbing each other, and they were frighteningly too good at their jobs. Yes. And in this case, we don't have that. We have people who are just so desperate to stay in Trump's orbit and stay in Trump's good graces. And in a way, it's saving us, because they're all idiots, and they try to do something like go after Jerome Powell and it gets thrown out immediately, you know, or go after whomever and it gets thrown out gets thrown out in court.
So the incompetence is almost the savior in the short term. The problem is, though, that you have the military who are acting on illegal orders. Yeah. And that is a problem, isn't it? Because, a lot of people are hoping that the military are going to rise up and turn on Trump. But Fox is also played on military bases.
In military bases. Yeah. And I don't think we have enough. I don't think there's enough military personnel that would do that. Plus it's like goes completely against everything that they're trained to do. The thing that's interesting is they keep talking about, he's going to take out their power grid in Iran. And every time they say it, I say it out loud. You mean commit a war crime? Because that's what that is. That's a war crime. You're not allowed to do that.
Trump says he's going to shoot it down, which suggests that it flies.
He just the other day in the cabinet meeting, he said he was ordering B-2 bombers, and I'm not an expert on the military. And somebody goes, they haven't made them since like the 90s. And I'm like, there you go. Yeah. I might be getting that date wrong, but
but all his data points are completely wrong. He talks about 200,000 pound bombs
that they don't exist.
The max is going to be like a 40 or 50,000 pound bomb. Yeah, so there is no expertise. There is no strategic understanding of how the military operates. It really is just a case of men with their toys just playing. But the problem is that people are dying. Yeah. The collateral damage is significant, that civilian casualties haven't even been counted.
Oh, it's going to be horrible. Yeah.
Aside from the girls' school in the first couple of days of the war, which should have halted the war. The Americans said, okay, we've accidentally hit a school and there's nearly 200 people dead and we need to take stock of what we're doing here. But they didn't. They just plowed on.
Yeah, and I would put those deaths at Hegseth's feet, because if anyone should have known, they were using an old map, and not only were they civilians, they were children, and it was a double strike. So what had happened, they killed the children, and then the parents rushed to the school to try to save their daughters, and then the parents got hit. Yes. Because it was a double tap. And it's like, how does that happen?
Well, he's got into into trouble over double taps in the past, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I have a final question for you, and it might actually be the most important one, so maybe I should have asked it at the beginning.
All good.
But there is one correspondent reporter from Fox who has a White House kind of pass, and he is part of the press gaggle. And he is actually asking quite pertinent questions of Donald Trump, more so actually than the rest of the reporters there now. And it suggests to me that I'm going to ask you rather than give you my opinion, but is he veering off script for a reason? And why is this individual really kind of doing a better job of journalism than many of the others right now?
I think corporate brass, I've seen this on some shows. Murdoch I don't think Murdoch has ever liked Trump, but Murdoch has to go along with this to make money. And that's all Murdoch really cares about is money and power. So he will go along with this, but I don't think he's ever really liked Trump. And I have seen glimmers of that in some of the shows on Fox, and it's only with the legit news people. And it's very rare when they do it, and very rare when they get a question out like that. And I think that there is a level at Fox where I think they're ordered by somebody high up in the network of trying to kind of make some criticism to point out some of this absurdity, because I think there's also a moneyed class that is close with Murdoch, and, you know, a billionaire class, almost an oligarchy class that know that this constant chaos and constant insanity is bad for the economy. It's bad for the world economy. It's bad for the money. It's bad for the money. So if it's bad for the money, they can't really, go all the way with it. And I do think that, because I have seen moments over in the 4 years I've done this, where I've seen moments where I go, I can't believe that actually made it on Fox, where someone will say something or they'll show something, and I gasp, because it's like, oh wow, maybe they're not completely all in. And I think that's coming from the head of the network. I do. If not, because Rupert's like, it's now his son, and there is like a corporate structure. Yeah. But I do think that they do know there is a level of we can't go completely and like,
well, they got burned a little with the
Dominion
with Dominion. But why is Peter Doocy specifically being, it's almost as if he knows that he's like the last real reporter left in the room, because they've got rid of so many press passes now. His
dad did it too. Steve Doocy on Fox and Friends would, and this is interesting because Steve Doocy is kind of semi-retired now.
Yeah.
And he's like part-time because he's an older guy and he moved to Florida and the whole nine yards. But Steve Doocy I had a segment that I did repeatedly called Steve Doocy Goes Rogue. And I would do like a joke voice on it on my podcast, Steve Doocy Goes Rogue. And it would be him saying something against the grain, where he'd be like, wait a second. And he would call out his co-host. And it was like these shocking moments. And somebody it happened so often that I got contacted by somebody at Washington Post, and they did an entire article about it, about Steve Doocy going off the rails. And Peter Doocy's his son. And I think that he probably feels very empowered because he sort of was born into the Fox News universe due to his dad, and is very comfortable with Trump. And people often they talk about this all the time, flip the dad for the son because they look alike and they're tall blonde guys. But there is something about the familiarity with, Peter Doocy can't say anything bad. He's not going to ask me a hard question. I think Peter Doocy's not an idiot. He thinks, well, I might as well, because the press pool's turned into a bunch of sycophants, except for, I got to give her a shout out, Liz Landers from PBS, who has been the latest, who's been getting some zingers in that have been crazy viral. She just did it recently. She did 2 recently where I was like, oh my, she called him out for mail-in voting. And she called him out for lying about the 2020 election. Those are 2. And I think she gets away with it. She's a very pretty blonde, younger woman. And
right. So she kind of uses that to slip those
because I think he forgets.
In.
I think he forgets. Oh, she's going to ask me a question that I'm going to snap at her over. But Liz Landers has done it. And I think Ducey, because he kind of, was born Fox News, and Trump has seen him grow up and seen his career flourish over the years. And I think that's why he's able to get away with it, because, and I think
doesn't see him as a threat.
Yeah. It doesn't see him as a threat. And he thinks, oh, you're my buddy, you're my pal. And then Ducey will ask him these questions that Trump really can't answer. And because they have people from like these other goofy networks and blogs and my sister was asking me about that. She said, how do these people, what's going on there? I said, well, it's because the Trump White House doesn't care. And they have filled the the White House press corps with people from these goofy outlets that they'll start a question like, you are amazing. And and they do this like little speech. And then the very end of their little speech, they'll say, what do you think of that? And he's like, that's a great question. And I'm like, oh. Yeah.
But a lot of these people are far right influencers.
Yes. They're not legitimate journalists.
Right. And this is, again, part of the problem. You have Fox being state regime media. You have no reporters doing a proper job in the White House. And then you're basically left with people who are not really seeing the bigger picture, not least the kind of macro aspects of this. And it's just very dangerous for the country. But I just want to thank you for the work that you do, because, I don't think people recognize how important it is to try and re-educate people video by video. That's really all we can do. Yeah. And, you and I spent a lot of time editing, and we recognize that getting it right and getting it out there is so very important. And so I'm very grateful to you for doing, because I can't handle much Fox. It's, it's my kryptonite. And so the fact that you're wearing a kind of lead, outfit to prevent that is very helpful to the rest of us. And so I just want to thank you and thank you for joining the weekend show.
It's a pleasure to be on the weekend show. I'm a big fan, as you know.
Okay. Juliet Jeske, come back again and we'll have another conversation, and hopefully in better times. I'm Anthony Davis. Don't forget to support me and independent journalism at patreon.com/5Minute News. You can find me on Substack at The Anthony Davis. You can join the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. I'll come back next Sunday with a brand new special guest and more factual news to discuss on the 5 Minute News Weekend Show with Midas Touch.